based on what we've seen from the Denver Nuggets thus far in the 2023 postseason, they very well may have solved the equation. Now, the only remaining question is there anyone, including the Phoenix Suns, who have a hope of stopping them? Let's get into it. So like we talk about all the time in the NBA and in the NHL and what have you, it's very important not to overreact to small sample sizes. And one game is one of the smallest sample sizes you can possibly have. So you don't want to go overboard. But the way the Denver Nuggets played at home in game one in their series against the Phoenix Suns was utterly devastating. They were very competitive on both ends, and they were able to execute at a level that really makes other teams scared of what their ceiling could possibly be. Again, it just proves that the regular season, although it does matter for seeding purposes and stuff like that, the regular season is a completely different game and is often not perfectly indicative of the level of play we're going to see from certain teams. For instance, Denver has been very competitive defensively after a really up and down season on that end. The Sacramento Kings, same thing. They've had some issues against the Warriors, but they've dealt extremely well with a very dynamic, difficult to handle offense under the tutelage of Mike Brown. The shot making for the Nuggets, especially Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. was absolutely incredible. There isn't really much to nitpick in that area. So the question becomes, can Phoenix do anything to stall this machine? Now, Denver's not going to shoot the ball this well. Certainly Jamal won't shoot the ball this well in every game, but he has proven that his baseline of excellence in the playoffs is extremely high, as are his peaks of play that he's achieved in past years. He was amazing in the bubble, and he looks incredibly healthy now, even compared to the beginning of this season. So if Jokic shoots the ball a bit better, he can offset a little bit of a downturn from Murray in terms of shooting. But if Aaron Gordon, who most teams, including the Warriors in the first round last year, decide and really have to leave in most lineups, if Aaron Gordon's going to hit these three-pointers, what do you really do? You can't really stop the offense. They're going to put up 118, 120 plus on you almost every game, especially at home. So at the end of the day, Phoenix needs to shoot more three-pointers. They only shot 5 three-pointers in the first half tonight. That's probably not going to be enough, even if they're very efficient from 2. And those are the mid-range jumpers that they love to take, and they do very effectively. Durant and Booker were very effective in this game offensively. But the question becomes, how do they solve the math problem of this devastating Denver offense? So moving forward for the Suns, what do you do? I think there are 2 things the Suns need to focus on. The first one is doing something that they're not necessarily the best at, especially compared to making pull-up jump shots, but they need to put more rim pressure on Denver. They need to make Jokic defend in space more and try to put pressure on him so they can either draw a foul or they can get a kick out to the perimeter off of help. Because if they don't make enough threes in this series, Phoenix is probably dead. If they don't get Jokic in foul trouble in these games, this Denver offensive machine is going to be very, very difficult to handle in a way that gives you a chance to win a game. And obviously, Phoenix is going to have to win at least one game on the road to win this series. So those are the pillars that you need to focus on. You also, I think, need to punish Denver aggressively for doing any sort of thing where they leave Ayton alone in the post on a smaller player, especially on a guard. Ayton needs to be a factor in this series on both ends. In other words, he needs to be a significantly more active defender. There were a ton of plays tonight where guys were driving by him or at him, and he just sort of swipes at the ball lazily or watches as a guy goes by or as Jokic goes for the offensive rebound. He needs to be not only engaged, but he needs to be physically forceful on both ends, and that's not his strength. He needs to be an excellent rim protector. He needs to be active on defense, shutting off driving lanes. He needs to move his feet, and he needs to punish the Nuggets aggressively if the Nuggets try to put a smaller player on him to defend the post. He is arguably the key, because you know what you're going to get from Durant, you know what you're going to get from Booker. These guys are all-time spectacular offensive players. But if they don't get anything from Ayton, or they don't get enough from Ayton on both ends, this really just does not look like a series that's going to shape up in a way that's going to go Phoenix's way. So in other words, all is not lost. Phoenix is, again, a team with a ton of talent, but they need to get more from guys like Ayton. Chris Paul needs to be a factor offensively, and then they're going to need to get more drives and kicks for open shooters. The Nuggets look like they're really rounding into form. And another thing that you can't discount is that the Nuggets bench at the beginning of this year was a bunch of question marks, and it has evolved into a situation where you totally love having Christian Brown on the floor defensively. He is an underrated athlete. He plays with force. I think he had 4 steals tonight. He's a guy who going forward, you definitely trust to give you reasonable minutes in reserve against good point of attack players, simply because his technique and his physicality is very underrated and very reliable. And that's the key reason I think Michael Malone wanted him on the team instead of giving minutes to Bones, because Bones is a guy you just could not trust on the defensive end. Christian Brown, the opposite. And he's actually a guy who's a good enough athlete and a good enough finisher at the rim that if you leave him a driving lane, he will make you pay a lot. He made Minnesota pay on a couple of very important plays at key moments in that series. And then the other bench player, Bruce Brown, who is a guy who's been affecting games more and more lately in a really important way. He's a guy you can give minutes to, which means you don't need to gas out your key players like Jamal Murray and KCP early in series and early in the playoffs, which is another factor that should buttress the Nuggets very solidly if they want to make a long playoff run. We'll see what happens the rest of the series.